There we go. All righty. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the August Windy City Digital Project Managers Meetup. This month's meetup is on PM certifications or any other certifications that are relevant that a PM might be interested in getting. So before we begin and before I introduce our speakers, I wanted to talk a little bit about who we are. So Windy City DPM is a meetup that's been around for a few years, collecting various project managers across all stages of their career to be a channel where we can meet up and have presentations. And if it wasn't COVID, we'd actually be talking in the real world. But for now, we are doing video panel discussions. So we meet not every month, every other month when the mood strikes. And we cover a bunch of different topics. So in the past year, we've looked at our last meetup was Agile. We've also talked about the PM career path, a lot of different topics. So I encourage you, if you are a member of the group, to keep an eye out for all of our upcoming meetups. There's a lot more coming. I also want to talk a little bit about the host organization and the company that I work for, 8-Bit Studios. So 8-Bit Studios is a people-friendly technology design and mobile innovation partner in the Windy City. We make cool digital products. I'm a project manager there. And if you're ever looking for a partner to help build the product of your dreams, come give us a shout. But we are here to introduce some speakers and to talk about project management certifications. So without further ado, I will introduce them all. First up is Dani Theis. Dani is an Agile enthusiast with experiences in project, program, and product management. She's a Senior Agilist at Jellyvision who coaches teams and colleagues to continuously improve while keeping the bigger picture in mind. Dani loves partnering with teams and senior leaders to optimize their ways of working. She's a Marquette University alum with a degree in information technology, and she has several certifications, including CSM, PSM, PSPO, ICAgile, Agile Coaching, and ICAgile, Agile Team Facilitation. So many different certifications. We also have as one of our speakers, Tamisha Brown. She's a program manager at Nielsen and a regional leader for the business resource group Sable, sustaining active Black leadership and empowerment. Her project management experience spans 14 plus years across traditional program and project management to Agile coaching and Scrum Master. She specializes in spreading positive thoughts, streamlining processes, effective time management, and building relationships. She has a bachelor's in marketing from Illinois State University and has multiple certifications, including PMP, LSSGB, PSM1, ICP-AC, and ICP-ATF. So we'll be talking about all these acronyms. It's a big thing in certifications, as you will find. And then finally, we have Caitlin Boss. She's currently a senior project manager at Cloudbakers. Prior to Cloudbakers, Caitlin led global teams at IBM in delivering multi-million-dollar data migration solutions. Now she works with smaller teams in delivering CRM implementations and supporting clients with their cloud journey via Google Workspace migrations. Over the last 6 years, Caitlin has earned her CAPM, PMP, PMI-ACP, and CSM certifications, as well as served 2 years as a board member on a local PMI chapter. Unfortunately, our fourth speaker, Saad, is not able to join us because he had to hop on a plane for some transportation challenges that he was having. So he won't be with us, but I think the 3 speakers that we have are going to be amazing. Caitlin was with us before, so we're glad to welcome her back. And also we are welcoming back she's here every time, Emily, who will be moderating the panel. So Emily, I will pass it off to you. But first, for anyone else who is here, we just ask that you keep your microphone off. You can keep your video on if you want. That's totally okay. Just know that we're recording. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. And when we're done with all of our main questions, we'll cover some audience questions as well. So I hope you all enjoy.
I'd like to come off mute real quick just to give a huge shout out to Aaron for making it through all of those acronyms. Amazing, just amazing, just amazing.
I just read what's on the page. I have no idea what any of them mean.
Sorry. I usually do that when I have headphones in, so I don't think it's as loud. And I just decided to take right over. Yes, done. Agreed. Aaron, way to go with all of those acronyms. I have not a single acronym behind my name, so I feel less than prepared or less than worthy to lead this conversation, but I'm very excited to learn from you all about why it might be good for me to add an acronym or two. And hopefully that's what everyone else here is interested in learning. So Caitlin, Tamisha, Dani, let's get into it. Icebreaker. Tamisha, we're going to start with you. If you could take one class in a non-professional hobby, what would it be?
Bathroom renovation. I really want to run my bathroom and I wish I knew what I was doing. So I love that class.
I love that. Thank you. Caitlin, same question. Non-professional to you, hobby. What class would you take?
So I thought I was going to have a really good answer for this. I was just going to be like, oh, by the time we meet, I'm going to have something. So I'm just going to say, honestly, it would just be a Spanish class. I've actually been wanting to get into Spanish classes for the last year, but I really want them to be in person. Obviously can't make that happen right now, but I know the minute that in-person classes open back up, really just want to get into Spanish just to learn and kind of appreciate the culture. So that's my answer.
Awesome. That's a great answer. That's a very good answer. Dani, last but not least, what class would you take?
I would like to take a calligraphy class.
Yes.
I think it would be fun to have pretty writing like that. Really simple.
Absolutely. Handwriting, not something that our generation needed to value. So mine is obviously terrible. Maybe yours is also. Who knows? Well, good. Those will be some nice classes. I will join all of you in all of those classes. I'm not allowed to renovate my bathroom, but I would, maybe. So I'm going to ask you all this question. We heard what certifications you all have, and that we heard all of your lovely acronyms. But let's break it down for everybody here. What certifications do you have? And why did you choose to go with those ones? I know you all have quite a few, so feel free, if you want to give us the whole list and talk about the whole list, by all means, please do. Otherwise, feel free to pick out just a few to highlight for yourself, but that's the meat of why we're here. So Dani, what are your certifications and why did you choose to go with those?
Yeah, sure. So I started out with getting my CSM, which is a certified Scrum Master, and then the ICAgile Coaching and Facilitation certification, really to kind of set me up for my first Scrum Master role. So I think those really gave me the foundation. I ended up doing the PSM 1 as a workshop and then taking the test because I wanted to kind of challenge myself and dig a little deeper. And the PSPO was a self-study, exploring that other role.
And what were those last two ones? What's the PSM and the PSPO?
Oh, sorry. Yes, alphabet soup. The PSM is the Professional Scrum Master. So the PSM and the CSM are similar certifications put out by different organizations. The PSM is through scrum.org and the CSM is through, I think, Scrum Alliance. So they're slightly different. The CSM is you have to attend a workshop and then take a test, whereas the PSM, you don't have to attend a workshop, is optional. To attend a workshop, you could self-study and take the PSM exam yourself. So for the PSPO, which is the Professional Scrum Product Owner, I did the self-study and took that exam myself, just to kind of test my knowledge of the product owner role.
Cool. Thank you. Tamisha, what are your acronyms? What do they mean? Why do you have them?
I have similar ones to Dani, so I won't repeat them, but ones that are different. I do have a PMP, so Product Management Professional certification. And then I also have a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt certification. And my path and how I came down to my direction, I started with a PMP because I wanted traditional project management. I was already functioning in that role for a while. And a lot of companies require you to have a PMP if you want to be down that path. And so that was kind of how I ended up starting there. And then my organization was curious about the Lean Six Sigma path and whether or not they wanted to introduce that within the organization. And so I was able to be part of a pilot program and get that certification. And we actually, there's a couple of paths you can take with the Lean Six Sigma program. We opted for the complete a project as a group path to then be certified versus taking an exam. And so that was definitely more of a labor intensive route because you really are taking on an actual project through fruition. But in all of the certifications, they have different value and purpose, and depending on where you want to go in your career, it is how I ended up going the directions I went in and starting with traditional project management, and then wanting to be more focused on Agile is how I ended up going for my PSM, and then the different Agile coach and facilitator courses, just so I can get better at coaching teams on the Agile framework and the practices, as well as facilitating different workshops and events better. So that's really how I ended up on those other paths, is just wanting to shift from traditional project management to Agile and becoming greater in that area.
Awesome. Thank you. And Caitlin, what do your letters mean? Why did you pursue them?
Yeah, I'd like to give a bit of a, I guess, background as to why I got them in the order that I did. So
Yeah.
because we have different people joining here and you may have other people that you're mentoring or talking with, but so I started with my CAPM, which is kind of like the junior PMP, the Certified Associate Project Manager certification. I went after that because I didn't have the experience needed to get a PMP, but I still wanted something to showcase that this is the path that I'm on, this is the direction I want to head in. So I had that for a few years, and then at IBM, kind of along the same lines as what Tamisha said, you had to, there were some accounts like you had to have your PMP for, and it was just kind of the culture of everyone was getting their PMP. It was kind of like that, it helped set you up for knowing some of the terminology and using some of the different, things that you're going to use in a traditional waterfall type of project. Really difficult exam. It's kind of like that. I don't know, I guess it's kind of like just a lot of larger corporations and organizations are going to kind of know what it is and probably appreciate it a bit more just because it's been around for a while. But I've honestly gotten a lot more out of my Agile certifications, which has been really cool because the ACP is the Agile Certified Practitioner that PMI offers. And I actually enjoyed studying for that exam. Like I really enjoyed studying for it, and I still have the book for it and everything. I think you can just use Agile so many different ways. So I've actually gotten a lot more out of the Agile certs.
Very cool. Before I go on to our next question, I feel like everybody touched on this, and I just want to ask a very direct question. Were any of your certifications or pursuits of certifications required by your company? And were any of them sponsored by your company? That's an open for everybody.
I can kick it off. Yes, required, and yes, sponsored some. So with my PMP, I was at a different organization, and it wasn't required when I had started working there, but the team I was on was shifting to having a PMO, and the leader wanted a PMP as a requirement for that. So it was required for that role. And it was one of those situations where the organization would pay for it if you're going to be here a while, or you could pay for it yourself. And then where I'm at currently, we do require for you to get some Scrum Master certification because we are functioning heavily in Agile and as a Scrum Master on the teams that we support. And so it was sponsored by the company, and our company just in general sponsors a lot of learning opportunities. So if there is value in additional trainings, they're definitely open to what makes sense for the role that we're in or where you're headed.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'll just throw in real quick. So none of mine were necessarily required. There were certain accounts at IBM that you would have to have your PMP to work on them, but if not, then you could just take another account.
Got it.
But all of mine were sponsored by an employer, which is nice,
It was nice.
obviously.
Yeah. Dani, how about you?
Most
Your experience been?
Yeah. So 4 of my 5 were sponsored by an employer, either as something I requested. So, you know, the PSM is something I wanted to do. The other ones were a part of my onboarding as a Scrum Master. But the PSPO, the product owner certification I talked about, was something I just wanted to do on my own. So I paid to take that test myself. Cool. I will say that the test was much cheaper than if you were to pay to go to a workshop, for example.
Yeah. Cool. And we got a lot of questions, so I will stop tangenting, but I'm gonna do that sometimes because you all have very interesting things to say. So every now and then I'm gonna write down a thing and ask you other questions. Okay. Okay, so here's a good one. After we just kind of talked through all of the certifications that you all have and kind of what led you to get those, Tamisha, could you start to walk us through how someone might tell the difference between the different certification choices and how they might know what's right for them? For example, like, forgive me because I don't remember which one of you spoke about this, but there's, you know, the different Scrum Master certifications that are provided by different organizations. So thinking in that line.
Yes, I base it on where you want to go. So I feel like the PMP is a great baseline just because it's foundational. Not every company is big into Agile or focused on driving Agile. And so for me, if anything, I wanted to make sure I had some basic foundation. And so PMP provided that. Granted, it is also probably the most costly and it's a good 4 or 5 hour exam. But that one was definitely, while scary, I felt like at least always gave me a foot in the door to say that, yep, I know project management. I at least know the foundations, right? Every organization does it differently. So I think part of it is knowing where you want to go, because I knew I wanted project management. I was functioning in traditional project management. So that particular path made sense for me.
Yeah.
But then once I knew I wanted to switch to Agile, because I had just done the waterfall path for so long, that's how I started shifting directions and thought, okay, what are the Agile certifications and what's the basic one? So like Dani mentioned, there's the CSM, the Certified Scrum Master, which I did take originally. And when it ended up expiring, I didn't switch to PSM, but for different reasons. But for the CSM, I think one of the things that's important is to talking to other people that have them, because I then learned that the CSM is great from a foundational standpoint. If you're new to Agile and you're trying to understand what it is in addition to what it means to be a Scrum Master, that class really helped me to start to get down that path, where the PSM I felt was more application focused. So I went through the 2 hour training for that. I mean, the 2-class training for that, or sorry, 2-day training for that. And some of the other attendees, they were struggling to understand what was being taught. And I think some of that is because they weren't in the Scrum Master role, and it was their kind of first time learning about Agile and Scrum Master. And so for them, they were challenged, where I was already in a Scrum Master role. I already had that foundational training on Agile. So for me, the application, it was definitely a different thought process as I was learning through that course. So I base it on, where do you want to go? You know, what path do you want to take in project management? And also, if you know there are particular jobs that you're interested in, it's a great way to look and see what are those requirements, because then you also could narrow down your list that way too, right? You might see a job that says, oh, we need a Scrum Master, you must be certified. So then no need to take the PMP, just go with the Scrum Master, right? And then maybe, you know, once you're at that company, they might pay for you to take other certifications. So knowing where you want to go can make a help in that direction of where to start and what to take next.
That was awesome and very, very thorough. Thank you. Caitlin or Dani, do either of you have anything else you want to add to this idea of how someone might figure out which one might be the right fit for them?
I actually did not know. So Tamisha and Dani both have certifications that I'm not aware of, because I know the Agile space is growing so quickly, it seems like, and new things are popping up. But so I have this CSM, and I think my manager actually has the PSM, I think. And so I never knew that there was really like a difference between like being more foundational versus like application. So that's actually interesting to learn. I think along those same lines, it is important to ask the people who have these certifications, because I think sometimes companies may just, you know, they see these, you know, acronyms popping around in places, but maybe they don't really always know like what they necessarily mean, or, you know, what's required for those. So yeah, no, that's interesting. I actually learned something there. I'd reiterate, obviously, it seems like, you know, the PMP in my experience has been more, I feel like larger companies seem to like care more about it. Whereas companies that are, you know, growing and just more, I guess, flexible in nature and kind of up and coming, they just seem to be more open to Agile practices, which is more fun anyways.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Dani, anything you want to chime in on there? Nope, she's good. Sounds good. All right. So I know we've talked a lot about specifically the PMP and the CSM as being really good foundational courses and certifications. Are there any other certifications that you might recommend to someone who's just starting out as a project manager? Or if not, if it's really those two, do you want to speak to what it is more in detail about those two certifications that are really helpful in providing a foundation for brand new project managers? Dani, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So the CSM was one of my first certifications. I mentioned that in the two ICAgile certifications. For me, the CSM was just like Tamisha said, it was that entry level, really, you know, giving me the foundations of Agile and Scrum. But honestly, probably the ones that, you know, beyond the framework, which is really important to know when you're a Scrum Master, it's ICA in my head, and I'm trying to say the actual name of the organization. I'm getting tripped up. But those two certifications around coaching and facilitation are, to me, really, really transferable. And the way that I got those was through a week-long boot camp where you not only learn the techniques, but you actually get a chance to apply them and be on the risk, like be an attendee or, you know, be someone who sees how they're used. And to me, that has been so helpful. I think that, you know, that's phenomenal in a project manager or Scrum Master or program manager role, right? As you're facilitating conversations or even structuring meetings. I took that certification probably, you know, 3 or 4 years ago now, but I still use those techniques. So they talk about how do you structure a meeting, and I referenced that structure last week. So I think that that coaching and facilitation certification, in addition to the CSM, has been really helpful, or was really helpful when I was starting out.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I think those more soft skills are so key to successful project management, whether you're in a waterfall or agile environment, whatever kind of company you're in, right? It's a lot about being able to move a conversation and help get better results or different results from teams. Tamisha or Caitlin, any other certifications you want to talk about for people just starting out, or any Any PMP CSM things you want to really shout out again? For people brand new to the field.
I think because you're highlighting on brand new, I would say the PMP, there's certain requirements you have to even take the exam. You have to have so many hours of experience. You have to have like over a course of X number of years. So there's all these different check boxes you have to hit just to take the exam. So I think the CAPM is a good, if you're just basically starting out, that's what I did. I started with the CAPM. You're studying, the thing that's interesting to me is you're studying the exact same material. You're just being tested on it differently. So the CAPM material, you're going to be focusing more actually on the foundational side of traditional project management, whereas the PMP is more of applying that. So then it's a bit more intense because you're taking all of that knowledge you've gained from, the CAPM or just in general studying and now applying it to different scenarios. So I'd say just fresh starting out, maybe check out the CAPM.
Nice.
But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. I forgot. Sorry. Didn't write it down, but I forgot you had mentioned that. And I think that makes a ton of sense. Tamisha, anything you want to add to this lens for brand new project managers?
The only thing I've mentioned is I agree with what Caitlin just said. I completely forgot about the like requirements to take the PMP. But one of the things I did also realize is project management is bigger than you think it is. So when I had to apply for it, I recognized that I was doing project management outside of just being at this corporation doing project management. So I was volunteering at the time, I think at Chicago Cares. And so I was also leading projects in that way because I was leading volunteer projects, right? So regardless of what you take, of course, for I think anything for PMI, there's some type of requirement or some application you have to fill out. I think it's important to just make sure you look at it in that lens that, we do projects in a lot of ways. And so when we're talking about how many hours, how much time, you should kind of just take a step back and not just think of like, there's this thing that was titled project, because projects exist in a lot of ways. So keep that in mind if you apply for one and wonder if you have enough credentials or enough background. You probably do if you think about it.
Absolutely. I think, yes, I'm reading that Caitlin in the chat is saying what I was about to say too, which is like, yep, that's a really good point, Tamisha, that like, just because you're not actively in a role of project manager doesn't mean that you're not project managing. Maybe your bathroom renovation, for instance, you don't have to be the one to renovate your bathroom, but you could probably manage that project. Or the group vacation, right? Somebody's putting together that meal plan. Somebody's gathering a list of activities you all want to do. Is it usually me? Yes, it is. Thank you for asking. Do I wish it wasn't? Yes, I do. All right. This is an open forum question. Anyone can jump in. Of all of your courses you've taken and books you've read and certifications you've taken, if you had to choose the one that has been the most helpful to you in the long run, which one would you choose and why? It's a tough one. Nail biter.
I have an answer, but I don't want to hog the mic. I'll just say the PMI ACP would be my one.
And what was that and why?
It's through the PMI organization, which also does the PMP, and it's the Agile Certified Practitioner. And because I feel like for me, that gave me a nice foundational understanding of everything Agile. You still have to take like a 3 or 4 hour exam. You still have, a good book that you have to make it through, and, they have courses and stuff you can take. So I just think I've used a lot more of that knowledge in my day-to-day than what I've used of my other certifications. Not saying that I haven't used anything, but definitely the ACP.
Awesome. Dani?
This is a really hard one for me, but I think if I had to pick, it would be the boot camp, which I came out of with the coaching and facilitation certifications, just because of how applicable they are really across the board.
Awesome. Tamisha, if you had to pick one.
I'm really torn. I mean, I went to the boot camp that Danny's referencing, and I went last year, and I did actually just pull out one of the books this last week to reference something in there to prep for a meeting that I had coming up. So if I have to pick one, it's that one. But I also recently found myself having to go back to project management basics to be like, all right, people are having lots of meetings and random conversations. I need to go back to kicking off a project. But I will say the boot camp is what I've referenced most recently. So I'll say that one.
Cool. I'm not surprised that that was a hard question because not a single one of you has just a single acronym. You all have multiple. So thank you for playing along with me as I asked you to Sophie's Choice it. I almost said Rosemary's Baby and I was like, I think that's the right one. So thank you. Also for bearing with me on a Thursday evening. I try to keep myself entertained. Okay. From your perspective, do you think the harder certifications are considered better? Or Aaron, I might be reading this question wrong. Are harder certifications considered to be better than those that just require like completing a class?
Yeah, so the way I was thinking that is, there are some certifications like the PMP. I took my PMP. That was hard. That required a lot of studying and then a big exam. And there are some certifications where honestly you pay for it and you take a weekend class. And if you pass the class, then congrats, you have the certification. Do you think there's any sort of stigma? Or do you think there's any sort of prestige for some of these certifications that are considered to be harder versus ones where it's really like, okay, you paid for it, so you got it?
Thank you, Aaron.
I say no. And I say no because I feel like regardless of these certifications, they've required time, studying, learning, trying to understand the concept, and whether that's me by myself in preparation to take an exam or a boot camp for a week or a 2-day class, like all of it requires me to actually be attentive and focused on what I'm trying to learn if I want to take the exam. And all of that just learning and experience that comes from, I can't believe this. I feel like high school's over and I hated exams, and now I'm kind of being like, well, that's the value of studying and preparing for the exams. You have an opportunity to actually get that information. And if you have a genuine interest, you then try to apply it in your job. And so I don't feel like the PMP was better because it was harder and it took more time or anything versus, taking an exam without having to take a 2-day course. It really comes down to the value that you get from preparing for it or engaging in the activities that's required for it. And I think if you genuinely care about that particular certification, you're going to get that value, whether it's hard or easy or not, because you still are going to prep for it.
To kind of build on what Tamisha said there, to me, it's like you get out what you put in, and it's what do you make of it afterwards. So, Tamisha and I both referenced that we've even referenced a certification from the past recently, right? So the way that I think of the certifications is really they're just tools in your kind of toolbox, and you lean on them when you need them. But also take that with a grain of salt because I also do not have a PMP. So I can't compare to that. So just keep that in mind.
Awesome. Awesome. Caitlin, do you have any thoughts on this one or anything else you'd like to add?
I would say it depends on the perspective you're looking from. I think companies, again, depending upon the size of the company, they place a higher value on the PMP, just in what I've seen. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's making like that you're a better project manager.
Mm-hmm.
again, because I didn't say the PMP is my one that I would stick with, you know, if I could only pick one. I just think sometimes companies may lean one way, but me personally, I don't think there's a difference in them in terms of it. Again, you get in what you get out what you put in.
Yeah, for sure. And that's a really nice segue into an audience question, which I feel like you kind of just answered, but I'm going to ask it so that we can all think about it and talk about it. Are there any of the certifications, not necessarily of the ones you have, but of the ones that are out there, are there any that you feel like you don't need? Or to state it another way, what certifications are more of a nice to have for your resume, but you feel like might actually not be needed in order for you to be a valuable employee or member of your organization? Shout out to Jackie. That was a really well-written question. This can be for anybody, if you have any thoughts on that. We stumped them, Jackie.
Yeah, I think this is hard. I mean, out of the ones I have, I feel like I've gotten value out of everything I have, but I've used them in different ways. Like the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, no, my current job didn't say, do you have one of these? We can't hire if you don't, right? It's definitely more of a manufacturing type of certification or industry that has that certification. But in going through it, I learned a lot of tools that I still use that I haven't learned in any of the other certifications that I have. So when I say tools, I'm talking about, they sound really simple, but they just like asking why 5 times, like the 5 whys. I learned that from the Lean Six Sigma Green Belt program, which is a way to get to the root of a problem. So when someone says, oh, this is happening, instead of saying, okay, say why. And then you keep asking that to really get to what's the real problem we need to address, right? That was something I didn't hear about in any other certification classes that I have, or just a few different tools. So if I'm thinking about my current role, technically that certification is not impacting me, but the tools I gain from it are skills that could be used for anything. So in a sense, that's one I don't necessarily need right now.
It was a great answer, Tamisha.
I would just say that for me,
Whoop. Go for it.
I was just going to say real quick for me, the CSM probably didn't give me as much as what it would give someone who didn't have like an ACP, because I did the ACP and then the CSM, so I kind of went backwards there. So I would say just, you know, making sure that you're not kind of duplicating efforts. So that for me personally, the CSM didn't really give me that much, but if I didn't have the ACP, it probably would.
Cool. That makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Caitlin. I think it's an order of operations piece. But yeah, I think Caitlin and Tanisha summarized that well.
Awesome. Another audience question that Don just posted in the chat here, and because we were talking about it and how much value it added, those of you who went through the coaching boot camp, can you talk a little bit more about that? You can see Don's question, but I'm going to say it and rephrase it. What did you hope to get out of it? What did it end up covering? Did it live up to your expectations? Anything else you want to share about the boot camp? We're very excited and interested in this boot camp.
Yeah, I can start. I know Tanisha took it more recently. Tanisha, feel free to jump in if things have changed. So I went to the boot camp. It was a week-long on-site, all day training for 5 days. And they start you out with facilitation. So you first focus on like facilitation, and it teaches a lot of techniques of, how do you do brainstorming, how do you make, how do you create the space? How do you set up for a meeting? If you think about a meeting, how much time should you prepare? What goes into that preparation? And then it moves into basics of Agile, and how do you, then facilitate and become that coach, leveraging the Agile, methodology. For me, I had zero expectations going into the boot camp. It was really one of the first certifications or trainings I had ever been to, and I had definitely never been to a on-site. It felt like camp, right? Like camp, but for adults. But it definitely, exceeded my expectations. And as I've said, it's something I still use. I still have the books from 4 years ago, and I regularly reference them. One of the techniques that I referenced earlier this week to my team was, it's called the POWER setup. So it's an acronym, and it's really simple in memory, but to me it really serves meeting setup, and that's something I do. Even meeting setup, workshop setup, but it's an acronym to help you think through setting up a meeting. So P stands for purpose. So making sure that you define the purpose of a meeting so that we're, spending people's time well. Then defining the outcomes. So what do we actually want to get out of this? And I actually put those two things in my meeting invite so that everyone knows what we're doing. But then as a facilitator or the host, thinking about W stands for what's in it for me. And then E stands for engagement, and R stands for responsibilities. So if you have activities, who's going to facilitate them? How is that going to go? Thinking through, if this is what we're doing, what are the techniques we're going to use? And that's a really simple technique, just one of them as an example, but it definitely exceeded my expectations, and it's still something I use today.
I'm going to jump in and ask, can you tease out for us how you would define what's in it for me, the W?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the what's in it for me, it's thinking about the audience, right? So if you have this meeting, even if you have the purpose and outcome, thinking about who are you inviting and like, why are they there, right? So are they there because they're a stakeholder and they need to give you input, or are they there because they, what do they need out of this, right? Do they have expertise that, they need to share? But making sure that the people that you invite to what ultimately it tries to get you to think about as a host is, why are you inviting the people? So you don't end up with this meeting of a bunch of people and you've missed the people that you actually need.
Awesome. Thank you. I love that a lot. Tamisha, anything you want to add about the boot camp? And then Caitlin, of course, if you have taken the boot camp, we've just talked about it a lot with these other two ladies.
Just a couple of things I'll add. I think when Dani went, it was at a literally offsite, as in in the woods. And when I went last year, it wasn't. It was in Atlanta, and we all stayed at random hotels, but we just kept going back to this conference room. And it was about maybe 20 to 25 people, and you end up basically sticking with this group of people and doing all these activities together. So I heard from other teammates about it, and they all were just like, it's great, you should just go, it's great, you're gonna love it. And so I didn't know exactly what to expect, especially since mine was not in the woods somewhere. And so I think it did make it a little different of an experience because you aren't seeing the people every day all the time, but it did offer opportunities to network. We created our own little LinkedIn group after our boot camp week was over, and we continue to encourage each other and share ideas and share thoughts. Some of the things that I took from that I used once I left the boot camp was around high performing teams and how do you help your team set the right foundations for working together. So I immediately knew I had a team that was struggling with conflict and having open conversations and taking risks, and it was just not the best environment. And so coming out of that boot camp, I actually had an exercise that I used with my team to open those conversations. And as Danny mentioned, like create that safe space for people to feel able to talk about the real problems that we're having and how we can improve on it. And the team did get better as a result of that. So that 5 days, you learn a tremendous amount of information, but they're all tools. And it's all about how do you take these different ways of working with people and figuring out the right tool for the right occasion. So sometimes we get caught up in, oh, I have a meeting, we need to do an exercise. Okay, we'll just do this one. And this class is about how do you be more intentional about setting up the exercise, setting up what you really want to come out of that environment, as well as the coaching, which then focuses on how do you know the difference between a mentor and a coach? And how do you determine what is the right situation for the person? So that class had taught me that, and a mentor is really someone that you might go to because you want clear direction. You want them to tell you what to do. You want them to kind of just say, this is how you should do it. Or a coach will ask you questions to help you figure out what it is that you want to do and what you want to accomplish. And that boot camp allowed me to understand the distinction. And when I have conversations with my manager, then I can say to her, like, I don't want you to tell me the answer. I just want you to help me think through what I'm thinking. Or, I really just need you to tell me how to do it, right? So there are a lot of things that came out of that class that I still go back to, I'm still using. And like Danny, I have the 2 books on my shelf above my head that every now and then I go back and be like, okay, what's that thing called again? So yes, it's been instrumental.
That's awesome. I'm sold. Heather, I gotta take some time off. That's awesome. Can somebody send Aaron the link for that? Can you guys send that, and we'll be sure to send that out.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You guys are the best. Heather says I can take some time off. Thank you. It's nice when your boss is on the panel. Okay, we are almost at 7 o'clock, which is wild because I feel like time has flown because this has been such a lovely conversation and an easy discussion. But a couple more audience questions that I want to make sure that we get in here. So jump in if you have a thought on these. They're not directed at anybody specifically. For someone who is a mid-career professional looking to pivot towards project management away from supply chain management, are there any courses or certifications you all would recommend? And what might be the best source out there for finding that education? So again, I'm someone who's in my mid-career. I've been in supply chain management, but I really want to get into project management. Where should I start? What's the best source for me to find that education? What do you think?
I'll throw in a couple things, although we all want to go to this boot camp that we're learning about, which I'm very interested in. So I'm so happy to hear about your guys' experience there. I guess I'm kind of biased towards PMI. Just, I don't know, because it's where I started and I served on the board for a couple of years. And so I'm kind of leaning towards them. I know they've been expanding some of their different options that they have for just learning. I think they have some courses that aren't necessarily something you take to get a certification, but they've also expanded their certification offerings. And so I think, again, based on, I think Tamisha mentioned this earlier, just based on where you think you're wanting to go, are you wanting to maybe go to a more, I don't know, startup software type company, or are you wanting to do more of migration type work? I think that's going to help kind of point you in one direction over the other, whether that's, doing something more traditional like a CAPM or PMP versus going to this awesome boot camp.
I would add to that. I would start looking at jobs that you might be interested in, because like Caitlin mentioned, the PMP definitely is costly, it's time intensive, and if you end up getting a job where the company's like, oh, we don't even need that, you might not feel like it was the best use of your time. So I would maybe check out jobs that you might be interested in at different companies, see what's required for those jobs, and then use that as a baseline for potentially what could be next. So a lot of companies are switching to Agile, so they wouldn't care about PMP so much, but they might care that you have what Caitlin mentioned, or that you have Scrum Master. So I would start looking at jobs that you might be interested in, see what companies are looking for, and then use that as a baseline to help you determine which certification would make sense. But you can always, I forgot, I took a project management course at Loyola. I'm in Chicago. A while back when I was trying to figure out project management, and my degree was in marketing. So I went through an actual like project management course at Loyola, so that's also an option too of going back to school for project management. If that's an interest, a general interest, that could also be of value.
Awesome. Thank you both. Dani, any other nuggets of wisdom you want to add to that one? No, she's good. All right. I think I've got 2 more questions. Another audience question. Are there any other project management thought leaders that you followed during your certification journey or after, or like forums that you've engaged in? Totally okay if that's easier to like email to Aaron and I too, if you can't like have it collected, and we'd be happy to share that out. But if there are any thought leaders or forums that you want to promote now or let us know that have been good resources to you all, that would be super helpful.
I still follow the 2 coaches that I had from the boot camp. However, their names are completely escaping me. I can see their face, but not their names. So I will pass those along whenever I can find them.
Awesome.
So Lisa Atkins is one of the, she was one of my facilitators at boot camp. I had a couple others, and I'll need to pull their names, but Lisa's written several books about coaching agile teams. And I can drop the spelling of that name because it's not Lisa like you'd think, but she's one of the ones I do follow along.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. Last question. Are there any new certifications that you're planning for in your future? Dani's nodding.
The next certification that I would like to get is the LESS certification, which is large scale Scrum. And that focuses on, how do you scale Scrum? So that's the next one I'm looking at.
Awesome. Caitlin and Tamisha, do you have your eyes on anything next? Or are you good for a while? Besides the boot camp, obviously, Caitlin.
I know I'm pretty pumped about this boot camp. So I don't know. I've actually been looking for something new to like go after, and I have honestly felt a little like I lost. So this was helpful because it's actually given me some new things to check out. So I don't have anything.
Nice.
I'm actually the product owner, professional Scrum product owner is on my list. I work a lot with product owners, and as I mentioned before, the sheer experience of trying to learn and gain that knowledge, just even prep for the exam, I feel like it would give me some value. And then change management, I feel like that's another area that I really want to grow in, because all these projects that we work on, very often they're because we're changing something. So I really want to get better at understanding change management and how to drive that in an organization.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, there we are, 7:02 on the dot. A little over, but that's okay. We didn't start on time. Any final thoughts from you 3? Anything you feel like you didn't get to share? No? Awesome. Well, I thank you. Oh, Tamisha, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, I am happy to always share whatever knowledge I have. So if anybody is feels like there are questions they have they didn't get to ask, or just still wants to pick my brain, you can always find me on LinkedIn, and I will gladly share any knowledge or tips I've had studying for PMP or any of these exams. So just wanted to share that.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys. This was a really wonderful discussion. I have learned a lot, and Caitlin, I'll see you at the boot camp. Can't wait.
It was great. Thank you all so much for everyone who came and listened in. I hope you had a great time. I hope you learned something helpful or interesting or just cool. For our speakers, as always, thank you again for taking the time out of your day to guide this conversation. And thank you, Emily, for keeping it running along smoothly. So that's about it. We will have more meetups coming up in the future. What will the topic be? We don't really know. If you have an interest in the topic, shoot us a message on meetup.com, because we're always interested in what you all would really like to know. We want to cater this to your interests. And if you know anyone who you'd like to see as a speaker, or you think would be a kick-ass person to teach everyone about something, then also shoot us a message, because we're always looking for new speakers as well. And if there's anything that you liked or didn't like about this in general, then shoot us a message. The main thing that we're saying is we want to talk to you. We want to make this into a meetup group that is for our members, and maybe at some point in the hopefully near future, we will see everyone in person and we'll have a in-person meetup, but not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Soon.
Fingers crossed. All right, well, I hope everyone has a great evening, and we will be putting up the recording of this meetup tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. This was really, really great.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.